John Simpson, you feeling better?
I am. Thank you for asking, Paul.
All right, 7 o'clock. I'd like to call this meeting of the Lakewood City Council for Monday. Believe it or not, it's August already 3rd. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Boki,
Present?
Councilmember Brandstetter,
Here.
Councilmember Farmer,
Here.
Councilmember Moss,
Here.
Councilmember Simpson,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Whalen, not with us, Mayor Anderson.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. We now move to proclamations and presentations. The first item and only item of business under that category is a Clover Park School District report with Dr. Marty Schaefer. If he can be patched in. And we let the record reflect that Mr. Wayland has been able to sign in. So.
I'm here.
Good evening. You have the floor. Marty, we can see you, but we're not hearing anything.
Okay, then I'm happy to begin the Clover Park School District Board report. We have the same opportunities that the City Council does and having our meetings in a virtual manner. So I appreciate the opportunity to be able to share with you tonight. And I have a report on certain items, but Mayor Anderson, if your group has a questions at all, you can let me know how you want me to respond if they want to raise a hand and I can respond, or however you want to do that.
We'll do the questions at the end so you can go through your presentation. So everybody,
All right.
if you have a question, take a note on it and I'll call on you at the end.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to acknowledge that we have a special business meeting for the school district on Wednesday to thoroughly look at the superintendent's recommendation of starting school virtually in the fall. We've moved to a place where we could no longer wait on all the different uncertainties that were being given to us by state and federal agencies, and then all the other complexities associated with that. So we made the decision to aim towards this. We'll have a special call business meeting where we'll look at it very specifically. We've asked the superintendent to make sure that if we are moving forward virtually, that it has a very solid, robust virtual competency component to it. We've also asked that the virtual school would not only not lose ground for academic support, but that it would also create an opportunity to improve what we're calling digital citizenship, knowing that as the world moves forward, there's going to be a lot more virtual expertise that's required, and also the social emotional learning side, being connected, being respectful, utilizing character, those things that we're calling digital citizenship. We're also wanting to make sure that we tie what we do to our 4 pillars of success. It's our goal that life skills come to the forefront of what we do for our students. And so we know that the academic is important. We know that students must be engaged. So what can we do to make sure that they're engaged in a level with virtual learning? What can we do to meet the needs of those who are going to need to be in school, need some different levels of supervision? How are we going to handle things in terms of the special ed and those needs? And so it is, again, a very complicated process. We're also looking at what we do in terms all the way down to feeding students, transporting students, and just working out through those mechanics and acknowledging that it's a real hardship on our community because many families work, and then while their children or students are in our schools, that's an opportunity for them to be at work. So you can imagine the layers and the complication of us trying to just simply do the right thing. Our priority, of course, is to keep our students safe and to also keep our staff safe. And then also, of course, to keep our community, our families in our community safe, but at the same time, moving them through having an opportunity for the best education in terms of academic and virtual and digital skills as well. So I would say that's probably the most important thing I could report out on tonight. At the same time, you know, it's good for the community to know that we've gone what's called one-to-one. We really started doing that in March and April, the end of last school year. One-to-one means that every student has a computer or laptop device to be able to do online scholastic work. And while it was so complicated with COVID, we really weren't quite one-to-one. We were more one-to-one in terms of a family, but not always a student. So if you had families with 2 or 3 students in the same household, it was complicated. So we've now moved to where every student will have their own device and be able to go online and learn. So we feel great that we've done that. We're still working on the connectivity side. And so you folks may know that on the CARES dollars, it goes to the state and the Office of Fiscal Management, Financial Management, appropriates it, and they gave 20% of those funds that are kind of earmarked, as I understand it, to OSPI. And then OSPI's intention is to release it to make sure that there's connectivity for students. And that's going to be very important. We paid for over 350 or worked out to have over 350 hotspots at the end of last school year. And we're up to about 600 right now that we're working on that are needed. And so obviously just giving a student the device isn't what we need to do. We need to have a comprehensive approach. So we're doing the right thing. We're hoping that the funds will be released, that the hotspots will be available. And then again, there can be a lot of questions around it. They're going to be answered more at our special meeting. But I also want to acknowledge that at our schools, we've increased the, just the robust ability of our Wi-Fi so that if there are students who might be homeless that could make it to a school, they're going to have an opportunity in that, that place for connectivity. And of course, we've increased our technology support. So if a student let us know that they had a need, we could work with that student, whether they're homeless or whether they're in school, or just helping all students have access. So we're kind of under the mindset that access is everything at this point. So that's our goal. We also are working towards having a virtual model, what we call a hybrid model, to where we're going to be able to move possibly forward with kids in school and kids at home learning at the same time. And then we're also looking forward to having a face-to-face, more the normal approach. And we've set it up to where you can flip that switch, that we can move very quickly into those things, because it is the desire of the Clover Park School District Board of Directors to have students learning with their peers by their amazing instructors in a classroom, and to also then utilize virtual learning just to enhance what they're going to get in that classroom setting.
So are there any questions from council?
Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Moss?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just curious to find out if they had a pulse on students that are not able to work with a computer. I mean, they haven't had the experience of working on a computer. Do you have an idea if there are any of students in that category?
Yeah, so I think that's a very realistic question. And we've done surveys to find out. And of course, you can also, you're aware by those who don't connect or come online during those times. So at least we're able to reach out and be proactive and move towards making sure that those students not only get a device, but they get connected. And so that's why we've increased our technology support side. So you can imagine where our nice folks in technology who were probably already feeling like they were kept the right amount of busy, how much harder it's going to be on them to be able to truly give support. There's nothing more frustrating for individuals when you try to connect and you have an issue and you aren't able to get online. So like we said, access is everything, Mary. So we are being proactive and looking at what students need to be encouraged and helped and moving in that direction to come alongside of them.
So to follow up on that, how do you, if a student is in a location, they've never used a computer before and they don't have, would there be someone to give them extra support in getting set up and how to operate with those?
Yeah, and whether that extra support is over a phone, person to person,
Okay.
those are things that I'm not able to answer right now. I just know that what our superintendent did is asked us to increase the level of support on that technology side to be able to do those types of things. How they do it, I'm uncertain, but I mean, those will be the questions that will be revealed to us on Wednesday during our special meeting.
Very good. Thank you so much. And thanks for the report.
Yes.
Mr. Whalen.
Marty, thank you for the report. I had a couple of questions from parents about IEPs and how with distance learning, we're going to accommodate those students with special needs.
Yep. And so our goal is to try to see what we can do. And again, this is going to be presented to the board on Wednesday night, but is to be able to have opportunity for face-to-face instruction for individuals who have higher levels of needs. And within, of course, our requirements by the state for social distancing.
Very good.
But I want to be careful that doesn't
Hope it all works.
Yeah, that doesn't mean that every child who wanted to is going to be able to. I'm not certain exactly how it will work, but just like with Mary Moss's question, if they don't know how to use a computer or somebody reach out, yes, and be proactive. If somebody wanted, if somebody says our student has special needs, they're autistic, or those types of things, what are we going to do? We're going to have a collaborative meeting to find out how we can best support them.
Would that possibly include some sort of face-to-face instruction by some teachers for some groups of kids that really need the extra help?
Correct. And then, Jason, that's also contingent upon teachers and unions and all these things agreeing, but that is the goal, yes.
Got it. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Brandstetter.
I think you're muted, Mike.
Yeah, you are.
Okay, so well, thank you for being with us this evening, Dr. Schaefer. When we first got into the COVID arena, there were both guidance and I gather some funding around meals for children and some exceptions made to who was eligible, and the district did yeoman's work over the summer to do that. Is that going to continue to be the model, and is that model funded once we get into the regular school year, or are we going to go back to some children are eligible and some are not?
Well, Mike, I wish that everything you just said would be on the forefront of those who are running for governor so that they'd have to speak to these things. But we don't know if it's going to be fully funded or not. We're wrestling to be able to do exactly what you said. We're also doing everything we can to build those partnerships within our community, pick up, areas where there may be a gap or a special need. So our intention is to do what you said, is to continue to provide meals, continue to make our facilities available to those who have the greatest needs. And we are believing that the funding is there. But again, even with OSPI, they haven't released that 20% for even for connectivity yet. And so I can't say with a high level of certainty. I can just say, somewhere between hope and confidence is, it's not a great strategy, but that's kind of where we're at.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
And Marty, I had questions about that. You're talking about 20% of some amount. Is it for a special connectivity pot that they've set up? Because my understanding, and I work with it every day, is that you have the intent of Congress, then you have the guidance put out by the Treasury, which isn't always quite in line, and then it comes to the state, and they've been sitting on a lot of money in the hope
Yes.
they can keep it. And what has actually come to the Clover Park School District?
So I believe that 80% of it was released, and I can't tell you with certainty the exact dollar amount, Mary Anderson. We'll get that for you. I have a pretty good idea. I think I know what it is. I don't like to be inaccurate,
Right.
but it's safe to say that we received about 80% of what we were supposed to get through the CARES. And then the rest of it is being held by the state. And the rumor or the message that's coming out is that it's going to be released to OSPI, and OSPI has already told us that they're going to earmark it for connectivity. So that's all that we really know.
Yeah, my understanding was it was supposed to be at least 90% of the funds that came to the state were supposed to go out on a Title I allocation basis to the individual school districts. But
And you're correct, the way that it, you know how complicated it is when something's released from a federal to a state to a local district.
Yeah, it was just, I guess my question in that regard is if there's a, where you disappeared from my screen here, if there is a way that we can help at either a state or federal level with
Thank you.
lobbying for release of funds that are earmarked but being held up, let us know.
Mary Anderson, I think that we'll be able to tell you specifically, because what I'll do with what you just said is I'll see if we have one voice from our board, because I know our board has been looking at trying to make sure that OSPI gets the funds and that they do release them for connectivity. We think that's the very right thing to do, but that hasn't been officially, we haven't drafted a letter. And so perhaps if we do that on Wednesday, we could send a letter to you in the city and see if you would want to be in support of it or not.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Bolke.
Thank you, Mayor Anderson. Marty, we deal with the utility providers, and they come to us for the franchise agreements and whatnot. And when we talk about broadband and insufficiency of broadband in some areas, for the folks that actually have access to broadband services, either through Comcast or Click, or I don't know who else is out there, is it a sufficient quality? Are you hearing that to be able to do the Zoom calls with the teachers and whatnot, is it working for the district? What kind of feedback are you getting from your educators? And two, do you know what kind of feedback, are you getting any feedback from the families about the quality of the overall infrastructure for the folks that do have broadband?
No, another great question. And just hearing all these questions, it's remarkable to think how much change has happened in such a short period of time, right?
Right.
And so I have 2 daughters and a wife who are educators at different levels in the Clover Park School District. And they have been, of course, for years before I even got on the board. But they're not having troubles with the Microsoft Teams and the Zoom meetings. The accessibility is working. Some of the difficulty can be in that there has been some capacity issues where all of a sudden you can't, have your video going and you can only do sound because there's buffering and some problems like that. And so, that might be because it's Comcast, that might be because it's somebody else. And so we are seeing and sensing some of that, but it has not been that difficult to be able to have us continue to teach our kids.
Have you found, I don't know if the district's had any interaction, but if the district has had interaction that you know of, have you found that both Comcast and Click have been willing partners? Have they been responsive to the needs of the district?
Yeah, I'm writing that question down as well. So
Okay.
you guys, you're pretty clever that you have me come on to do a report, then you put me to work, and now I already have 2 areas of homework I get to do for you, but that's great. I'll get those questions.
It's important to us because that's actually, there's this application that clearly is critical, but overall a good broadband service is very important for the city as a whole economically going forward, and that kind of input on how our customers are being treated, how our businesses, how the school district is being treated by the people who provide that service is an important part, because then the city can make that known to the franchises that this is something that we feel might need a little bit of work.
Yeah,
And I think that's something we can help you with.
No, thank you. And Paul, when we did the survey, because we've done a couple surveys, there may be some information in that we already have collected too. I just don't know for sure, but I'm looking forward to asking the school district to research that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or any other assignments for Dr. Schaefer?
We appreciate the city. I tell you this all the time, but we appreciate you. We appreciate the difference you're making in our community. We know it's hard to give leadership right now, and you're doing it. Thank you. And we need to continue to work together during these times, and I'm appreciative that we have you guys, so thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming tonight and illuminating us as to some of the challenges that you're facing. It's going to get more complicated. I talked with Ron Banner not too long ago and on some issues. He was very, very helpful, but that connectivity is going to be a big one. So
yes.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
We'll move on to public comments. In this COVID environment, public comments are accepted by mail, email, or by live virtual comment. Send comments in advance by mail or email to Brianna Schumacher, City Clerk at 6000 Main Street, Lakewood, Washington, 98499, or B Schumacher, that's BSCHUMACHER, at cityoflakewood.us. Comments received up to 1 hour before the meeting will be provided to the City Council electronically. Ms. Schumacher, have comments been received? And if so, would you identify the names of the people who have sent them?
Mayor Anderson, we did not receive any public comments in advance of this evening's meeting.
Okay, thank you. We will also accept virtual comments, and I'll repeat the contact information after I read it. If you would like to provide live public comments during this meeting, you will need to join the Zoom meeting as an attendee by calling the telephone number 253-215-8782, which is on the screen, and entering participant number 868-7263-2373. That's either telephone number 253-215-8782 or Zoom meeting participation ID with Zoom meeting participation ID 868-7263-2373. or you can join the Zoom meeting on the Zoom application or website with that same number. Upon entering the meeting, please enter your name or other chosen identifier. Use the raised hand feature to be called on and during this public comment section of the agenda. And when you are unmuted, please provide your name and your city of residence, such as Mike Brandstetter, Lakewood, Washington. Each speaker will be allowed 3 minutes to speak during the public comments. Your comments can be of any item of interest to the city, whether or not it's on the agenda. Outside of public comments, all attendees on a Zoom meeting will continue to have the ability to virtually raise their hand for the duration of the meeting. That's a function of the application, but you will not be acknowledged and your microphone will remain muted except when you are called upon for your 3-minute comment period. And so I'll pause here and allow for the opportunity for folks to sign in. And that Zoom ID is on the screen. And the city clerk is in the control center. Have you seen anybody sign in?
Mayor Anderson, we do not appear to have any attendees that have signed in and raised their hand to speak this evening.
All right, well then we'll
Actually,
close. Pardon?
just identifying themselves as Miss Alice Fong has virtually raised their hand.
Okay.
Hi. Hi, I'm Alice. I'm actually born and raised Tacoman and just recently moved to Lakewood. And I just want to at least say hi and thank you for your service so that you're not kind of talking and not getting that interaction. So I just wanted to thank you guys for leading during this pandemic, which I'm sure none of us, except if we were or are 100 years old, experienced it. So thank you guys for doing the work that you do.
Well, thank you for taking the interest at signing in and letting us know the system actually works. Madam Clerk, anyone else?
Mayor Anderson, we do not have anyone else that has raised their hand to speak at public comments.
So I'll ask again, is there anyone else who wishes to sign in for public comment? We'll give you a moment here. And seeing none, I'll declare public comment closed. We'll now move to the consent agenda. Madam Clerk.
A, approval of the minutes of the City Council study session of July 13th, 2020. B, approval of the minutes of the City Council meeting of July 20th, 2020. C, approval of claims vouchers in the amount of $2,732,266.68 for the period of June 16th, 2020 through July 16th, 2020. D, approval of payroll checks in the amount of $2,505,836.24 for the period of June 16th, 2020 through July 15th, 2020. E, motion number 2020-38, appointing the 2020 through 2021 youth council members. F, motion number 2020-39, amending the Community Development Block Grant CARES Act program. G, items filed in the office of the city clerk. 1, Planning Commission meeting minutes of June 3rd, 2020.
Thank you. Is there any item which any member of the council wishes to have removed from the consent agenda? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
So
So
moved,
moved,
Mr.
Mr.
Mayor.
Mayor. Seconded.
It's been moved by Ms. Moss, seconded by Mr. Simpson that we adopt the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion? We have a hand up from Ms. Farmer.
I've never pulled anything from the consent agenda before, and I won't now, but I wanted to thank the 23 members of the future youth council who have signed up to serve, and I just think that's fantastic.
And we have Looks like we have Mr. Wayland rejoining us from the ferry line. Well, all in favor of adopting the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries. We now move to unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business to come before the council?
There is none, Mayor.
Is there any new business to come before the council?
City Clerk.
Motion number 2020-40, selection of non-law enforcement community representatives to represent the city of Lakewood in officer-involved deadly use of force investigations.
And for this, we have Chief Zarro.
I think there's signs now, so we're good.
Mayor Anderson and council members, as the city clerk stated, you have a list of names of applicants before you to people who want to volunteer to participate as the non-law enforcement representative on the Pierce County Force Investigation Team representing Lakewood. As you know, the law changed a couple years ago requiring certain things in the investigations of officer involved uses of deadly force. One of those requirements was the assignment of 2 non-law enforcement representatives to the team representing the community. Every jurisdiction that's involved has been working, I shouldn't say every jurisdiction, most has been working on identifying their non-law enforcement representatives through different processes, generally all the same, just an announcement seeking volunteers, and the members are chosen from the list of applicants. The people that you choose will be part of a pool after the Pierce County Force Investigation Team is stood up. If there is a officer involved deadly use of force in Lakewood, we would first try to call our 2 representatives. If they were unavailable for whatever reason, we could call on representatives from one of the other partner jurisdictions, be it Tacoma, Puyallup, or Pierce County, or whoever might be available. But our first call would be to our representatives, and that works both ways. Our representatives could find themselves in another jurisdiction acting as the community liaisons for the investigation in another jurisdiction. As far as the PC fit goes, we are waiting on one signature from the State Patrol, and then we'll have all jurisdictions in Pierce County have signed. And then the next steps are to select our non-law enforcement representatives. And then there's a few steps after that in getting them together for an orientation, and then identifying the investigators who will be assigned to the team. And we will do that in partnership with a non-law enforcement representative. So with that, I will turn it over to you for any questions, but you do have the list of applicants in front of you. And as part of the memo as well, I included a link to the Washington Administrative Code that spells out the roles and responsibilities of the people you'll be identifying.
Questions from Chief Zarro? Mr. Brandstetter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Chief. I just had a couple of items I wanted to clarify. The the role of the non-law enforcement community representatives seems pretty clear, but there was one item in there that is mentioned that says that they are involved in making decisions about use of involved agency equipment requests. And I was just trying to get an understanding or an example of what that might be.
Sure, I have actually a very good example of that. A crime scene scanner, or a scene scanner, for example, we have one. Not every agency does. And if they're an invaluable tool for documenting a crime scene in fairly short order. If we had an incident in our jurisdiction involving our officers, we would likely want that type of equipment to document the scene. But because it's our equipment, we would be precluded from using it unless there were no other options, no other agencies had it. Then we could go to the non-law enforcement representative and explain the situation and get their explicit permission to use our equipment.
So when you say we could go, do you mean that the investigators, the independent investigators who are wanted to request that, they would go, and then and these folks would give an opinion?
That's correct, and I apologize. That was confusing the way I phrased that. Yes, the investigating agency or the investigating team would, if they were requesting that equipment, would have to get permission from the non-law enforcement representatives that were assigned to that investigation.
All right, and then the second thing, Chief, is what's your recommendation of the list of applicants that we have, of how many we choose and appoint?
Well, I would like to see 2 to start out with, and there's nothing that says that this is the forever list. Whoever you pick is going to be our non-law enforcement representatives forever, and we won't add any or take any away. This is our beginning, and certainly we can. There's nothing that says that we can't open up for another round of applications in another week or another month or whenever we want to build on those numbers. But being a brand new entity and understanding that several other jurisdictions are identifying citizens as well, I think 2 is a good starting point. But again, that is you can do whatever you like with that, because there is no hard and fast rule. The 2 that you see listed in the WAC has to do with the amount that need to be assigned to an investigation or come out for an investigation.
All right, thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Whalen.
Yes, thank you, Chief. So what is the plan for the training of the 2 nominees to the PFIT committee?
Sure. Well, because the role for our 2 is going to be the same as the role for every jurisdiction's citizens liaisons, we actually, as chiefs, planned on holding a joint training where we have them all come together in one room for a couple of reasons. They might find themselves working together at some point, and it's good to have a face-to-face and to have at least met once before, but also so they all have the same information. And that'll be
Makes sense.
by the police chiefs. We don't know what, that'll happen soon. Hopefully we can get that scheduled within the next month or so, and at somebody's facility or community facility, if we can arrange for that. But it's going to be joint training is what we know so far.
Very good. Is there a type of background to the candidates? And we had some great backgrounds presented by the list today. Are there some backgrounds that you believe that might be helpful to the work?
Well, when we look at the requirement of the WAC, it's, what it says is it's people who have credibility with communities that have been disproportionately affected by law enforcement and use of force. So that's one of the backgrounds or the lens that you have to view the applicants through. And certainly, we have 2 applicants that are involved in the community even before this, but have worked to start up LAPAC, and that's in Julius Brown and Larry Woods. And I think those 2 certainly they meet the definition of the WAC, and I think have the integrity and the just the background to be able to do this. And that, I think, is where we start.
Very good. Thank you.
Any other questions? just comment. Where we find ourselves right now is that we kind of pulled this from the chief, and it was kind of at my instigation and the agreement of the majority of the council members. The reason for that was not any question of the chief's judgment. It was, in fact, I concur in the people he feels should be the initial two appointed. But I felt that in order for community credibility, it really was the council's responsibility to say who should be outside of the department looking in. And so people couldn't come back in the future and say that this was kind of an inside appointment by the department and it wasn't truly independent. And so that's where we find ourselves today. I think Larry Woods has already been operating in this capacity, so to move him on, it would be more or less a ratification. But I would entertain a motion to appoint folks and or nominate folks for appointment and see where we go from there. Just Ms. Farmer.
Actually, I have a bit more discussion, if I may, Mr.
Okay.
Mayor. We had a few women nominate and with some interesting background. And so I would like to discuss possibly having a gender balance, the good, the bad. Chief, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I think a balance is always good. There's also the background to look at. And I know with one of the women that applied, there is, she's employed by the Department of Corrections. And I think, you know, on the, and has worked in the criminal justice system in different capacities. I don't think that that's, I think, and having not met her, I think that background can be viewed as not being independent enough, as being part of the system that they're coming on to monitor. And then the other, Juanita Beard, I also don't know, but other than her application, I think there's certainly some merit to, you know, somebody with a MHP background being involved in this system. Certainly, and balance is always good as well. And that's, you know, and I'll go back to my earlier comments too. There's nothing to say that if we don't get the balance we're looking for with this round of applicants, that we can't open it up and look for that in another round of applications.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I had some concern not knowing more about the female candidates, where I did know more about Larry Woods and Julius Brown. So. And I was a little concerned when I saw the name Ramsdell.
And I don't know if there's a relation there or not, but she is the one that's employed by DOC.
Mr. Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just so I'm clear, were you looking for a motion made by us with regard to two of these applicants?
At least initially, yes.
All right. Given the discussion I've heard thus far about background and balance, I would move that Larry Woods remain, because he does have some understanding, and since this is the initial or the onset of this program, I think that would be a good start point. You mentioned a moment ago Juanita Beard. He goes to the balance of male and female that was spoken to a while ago. But what drew me to her is she's a clinical psychotherapist. And since we have a commitment with regard to mental health in this city, I think that she would be a good initial candidate to serve on this team. Thank you, Mayor.
So is that the form of a motion?
Yes, sir, it is. I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we appoint the nominees Woods and Beard. Is there further discussion?
Just a little bit.
Mr. Whalen?
If we could have three, I think the two that were initially mentioned, Larry Woodard, Julius, and Juanita, I think they collectively have really good qualifications and a background with some balance that would really, I think, add great value to this committee for the city. So I know we're looking at two right now, but if we could add a third, I would add Julius because of his significant background.
So we can save that for an additional motion.
Yes.
We'll entertain that. Is there further discussion on the motion on the table? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Please nay. Mr. Whalen?
Aye.
No, the motion carries.
Oh,
Next
yeah,
motion.
yeah. Well, I would move we add the third candidate to the subcommittee and the independent citizen participation, and I would seek a second to the motion for Julius. His background, his last name, excuse me, I don't have it in front of me.
Julius Brown, and I second it.
Yes, sir.
Been
Thank
moved
you.
by Mr. Whalen, seconded by Mr. Simpson, that we add a third appointee, Julius Brown. Is there any further discussion? Well, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you, Chief. I think that's a good
committee.
selection to get this going.
Mhm.
Very good. Thank you all.
So we move to reports by the city manager. Mr. Caulfield, back from The Walking Dead.
Thank you, Mayor and Deputy Mayor and council members. Good evening. I'd like to first start off, I'd like to call upon our Public Works Engineering Director, Paul Busich, who would like to give you an update on the status of the Jblm North Access Project, including a funding request, which is well within our existing budget to be able to get to 100% design. He's going to tell you that we're at 90%, but actually him and his team are probably more at about 95 or 96%. But with that, Mr. Busich and his team are on the line. So the first order of the reports by the city manager is this status update. So with that, Mr. Busich.
Good evening, Mayor Anderson, Deputy Mayor Whalen, members of City Council. I'm excited to come before you tonight and let you know that the work that we've done on the Jblm North project has been quite exciting and quite successful. With me tonight is also Troy Pokswinski. He's the project manager. I asked Troy to join me tonight in case you had any questions of a detailed technical nature, and also because I want to give him credit for leading the efforts to get this project to where we were. It's hard to believe that it's been almost 6 months, 6.5 months since we came before the council and asked you to authorize us to execute a contract with the design team to the tune of almost $2 million. I know there were a lot of raised eyebrows at that time. That's a very large effort. But we had 3.5 miles of roadway we needed to design, including 10 roundabouts, eliminating 5 traffic signals, dealing with residents, making a connection from our Washington Boulevard project to our Veterans Drive project. And we had to do it all in a very, very short and expedited time frame. The project team, including city staff, as well as our consultant staff, met every week regularly on Thursday mornings to address any issues and questions, make sure we're on top of it. And I'm very excited to be able to report to you that we met our deadline and we submitted our proposal for the DSIP grant to the feds on June 25th, a day before the deadline of the 26th. We're waiting to hear from the feds. We will know by this Friday, August 7th, whether we are successful. If we are, then they'll invite us to submit a grant. We'll have to write the grant, but I think pretty much we've given them everything that they could look for. I'm not sure what else we could give them in our other ones in our proposal. And then if we're successful with the grant application, then by September 30th, we'll have an executed agreement and authorization for a little over $9.5 or close to $9.5 million of federal funding. Back in January, February time, when we came to the council, I told you that I only wanted to get authorization to execute to 90%. There are a couple different reasons. Number one, it's a large body of work. There are a lot of uncertainties on what the true costs were going to be, even though I had a lot of faith in our consultants. Number two, we weren't certain whether the federal grant was actually going to authorize and allow for some of the design costs. They did not, so we cannot ask for the federal monies for design costs. However, in an interesting wrinkle, we can get credit for the design monies that we put towards the project as far as the cost split goes. So it's a kind of a strange way of looking at it, but essentially when it really comes down to it, they're paying for half the design cost by paying more of the construction cost. However you want to split it, we turn out to the good in that. Where we sit right now is instead of $240,000, which they had estimated it would take to go from 90% to 100%, we've worked with them. We've realized cost savings on the project. The amount of public outreach that we anticipated turned out to be far less. In other words, the residents didn't come out with pitchforks and burning torches to chase us down. They are all very much in favor, except for a few who just don't like roundabouts and don't like change, but we worked with them to help them understand what the project is going to be. So our ask now, instead of $240,000, is for $65,000. As the city manager indicated, that falls within the available funds we have set aside for this. So I'm planning on bringing forward to you at the next full council meeting, hopefully on consent, is strictly an amendment to the consultant contract for $65,000, and that'll take us across the finish line. Now, the one caveat I want to put on that is if we find out that we are not one of the successful applicants by this Friday, then we will reset and take a look at what we need to do so that we can put out the Gravity Lake Drive project, which we said from the beginning that the final funds don't come through for the full project. We still intended on doing from Nyanza all the way up to Washington Boulevard. We will probably request and recommend that we also extend out Washington Boulevard to the Interlochen intersection because that pairs with the Gravity Lake Drive Washington Boulevard intersection. That Interlochen is one of the more difficult cross streets on Washington Boulevard, and I would hate to have us do work right up to it but not address that dangerous intersection. It's a hazard if you've ever tried to come out of that at certain times of the day. So in the memo that I provided to you, you'll see that all the information I gave you is already covered. I don't want to take too much of your time tonight. So if you have any questions for me or for Troy, we're here to answer anything that you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Busich? Mr. Whalen.
Well, thank you very much for the report. It looks like things are moving along swimmingly. Do we get a chance to see, I didn't see in the memo tonight, a final or at least close to final 90% what the design might look like down that corridor?
I did not include the graphics. However, I have them prepared and I'd be happy to share the screen with you tonight if you have time.
Yeah.
Normally that would be something I would want to cover at a study session, but I thought that tonight I just want to give you a brief update and mention it.
Yeah.
Before with 65,000.
I'm fine with that. I would like to see at some point, maybe in a study session where we can squeeze it in, a look at the design. This is the largest single dollar project we've done, to my knowledge, in the city of Lakewood to date, at least in the last 11 years that I've been on the council. It's a pretty significant one. It would be nice to at least take a look and see how the roundabouts and the design come together.
Absolutely. What we'll do is we'll pull together a large roll plot for the project so you can see the final details along with some cut sheets so you can see all those, and we'll schedule it for a study session probably in a couple of weeks.
Great.
Here with the council.
That would be awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I do have a question, Mayor.
Mr. Bulkey.
Thank you. And this might be for the city manager. On the last page there, it talks about the funding sources and it mentions of GO bonds. If we win this, or when we win this grant, we'll think positive here. When do you anticipate the bonds going to sale, and will you be doing any other projects? Do we have another project lined up that we do a bond issue, or will this be the only project next year?
So Councilmember Boki, this is the last project that's funded with the bond proceeds that you all approved as part of the current biennial budget.
Okay.
And Ms. Kraus is, I know she hasn't issued all of the bonds. You did approve the ordinance about 1.5 years ago to do that. And so we'll issue the final remaining dollar amount that we need. And I don't have it at the tip of my fingers from a cash flow perspective when this project becomes obviously more real.
Okay, and Mr. Busich, how long do you anticipate the project taking?
Construction will take approximately 20 months.
Okay, thank you. That's all I got.
Any other questions? So we'll get some a good break in on the New Veterans Drive. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Busich. You guys have done a great job on this and the whole team pushing it forward, and hopefully it goes to the next phase within a week.
Thank you very much. I look forward to positive news from the feds.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Back to the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, the reason that you're operating in a virtual environment this evening is, if you weren't aware, the governor in the Four Corners agreed to extend the OPMA waiver another month through September 1st. And so that occurred late last week. Just for your information, our legal team will be in front of a Pierce County Superior Court judge this Friday, either morning or early afternoon, regarding the former QFC abatement project. And we're cautiously confident that the ruling will be in the city's favor, but we'll keep you appraised of that and hopefully have an update for you this time next week. You may recall that about a month or so ago, the city of Lakewood was recommended by the governor as a handful of cities here in Washington state to pursue working with the Air Force for their location of the United States Space Command. This is expected to be about a 4 to 5 year process. We received notification from the Department of Air Force late last week that we have moved on to the next phase. They sent over a series of applications and forms that they've asked us to complete and fill out. We're also working with Jblm on that as well, and that there's some information in there that the base is going to need to provide us, and they have already graciously agreed to help us out on that. Last week, myself and our senior policy analyst, Shannon Kelly Fong, we met with Sound Transit leadership, including their CEO. The purpose of the meeting was for Sound Transit to give the city an update in regards to where we are with the point, or where they are rather, with the Point Defiance bypass rail. Really two takeaways from the meeting. First and foremost is that they do not have any type of date certain of when they are going to allow Amtrak and WashDOT Rail back on their tracks. Again, they do not have a date certain in any shape, form, or manner. Secondly, they are solely wearing their regulatory hat in that they are also not going to allow Amtrak and WashDOT Rail back on their tracks until all of the safety recommendations that they have identified as their own internal process, as well as those identified by NTSB that can be done legally, are all completed. I will say I was very, very impressed with the presentation that we received from Sound Transit. And it is clear, again, that their focus is solely on safety for when that rail line does reopen for Amtrak Cascade services. One of the things that the Sound Transit CEO, Mr. Rogoff, did offer was to provide a briefing to this body. And unless there's any objection, I'd like to try and go ahead and schedule that in the next month or so as part of a study session. They can keep it to about 15 minutes or so. But again, I just wanted to provide you the punchline in terms of where they are. overall, again, we were very, very pleased with what we heard from Sound Transit. The Corona relief funds or the CARES Act dollars that the city has received, we continue to move forward with doling those funds out in a variety of areas: human services, social services, businesses, a number of our partners as well, particularly the fire district and the library. By the way, we have received a lot of positive feedback and phone calls from folks thanking the council for making these funds available on a number of fronts. One thing to point out is late last week, or actually early last week, our team did go through the lottery for the business grants. And so they're in the process of notifying the businesses. And if you want to see the specific businesses that are going to receive funds, that'll all be updated on the dashboard if it's not already done. One of the things that we're looking at is actually making some funds available to childcare providers. As part of the allocation of the funds, there was a small amount of money, a little over $18,000 that had been set aside for administrative purposes as far as social and human services. However, what we're thinking right now is rather than making that available for the staff resources that we're using to allocate these monies and things, is to make them available to childcare providers. That's the good news. The not so good news is that we've identified 192 childcare providers here in Lakewood. 102 are family home providers, and another 92 are actually business. They have business centers. So we feel that, looking at a $1,500 to $2,000 grant program, we might be able to handle 8 or 9. But again, it's something that we're looking at most likely going to move forward with. Again, expanding the safety net here in our community to make sure that those folks that need help are getting some help. Western State Hospital Master Plan, we continue to work with DSHS, the parent organization, on this. Mr. Buer, our Assistant City Manager for Community and Economic Development, him and his team have a meeting with DSHS representatives. It's either this week or next week on a number of fronts. Really, the major issues are we're still trying to get an understanding of the bed count and the facilities that they're proposing. And then the other thing that we're not getting a clear understanding of is the project phasing, the phasing of the redevelopment of that site. And that's information that we need to have in order for their master facilities plan to move forward as part of a conditional use permit and hearing examiner process. So hopefully we can get that information from them. But again, our staff continues to work with DSHS on this. And again, we're confident that hopefully we'll be able to get answers to our questions. I have some good news here, and I'll share some information with you later this week on this. But our sales tax for May came in on was it Thursday or Friday of last week, and I think as this body's aware, there's a 2-month lag there between when the sales actually occur and when we get the sales tax. So for the month of May, our sales tax actually not just exceeded our budget estimate, but also grew a little bit from 2019. Overall, our sales tax is actually exceeding budget for 2020, and is still below where it was in 2019. But really, it's the former that's the most important part there. I think a couple of things. One is that this is an indicative of the strength of our financial policies. And then secondly, the only thing that we can figure out of why sales tax is doing as well as it is because a lot of folks are going out and shopping at primarily the big boxes. So the Albertsons, the Safeways, Target, H Mart, Pando World, Walmart, et cetera, Lowe's, as well as a huge increase in online buying. So further analysis is needed there, but I did want to share that with council. So that is a bit of some good news there. Also wanted to let this body know, pursuant to Washington state law, we have kicked off the lodging tax process for 2021 grants. And matter of fact, our Assistant City Manager for Administrative Services, Ms. Kraus, kicked that off earlier today. And applications are due from interested parties. 3 weeks from today, close of business on August 24th at 5 p.m. From there, they'll move forward to the LTAC committee, who will then make a recommendation to this body that'll come forward to you in the October-November timeframe as part of the 2021-2022 biennial budget process. So with that, that's my report. Thank you.
Questions for the city manager? Not seeing any hands. And we'll go to council comments. Mr. Brandstetter.
Mr. Mayor, I had a question for you as to whether in 2 weeks or what timeline we might hold an executive session so that we can get started on the 2019 performance evaluation for the city manager. We sort of held off because of the way that the meetings are, but time is a wasting on that.
That's true. So Mr. Caulfield was just, we've mentioned it in passing, but he kicks that off with the self-evaluation and then we come back. So what do you think a time frame on that would be, John?
I can get you something later this month, Mayor and Council, if that works for you.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah, and again, I haven't been we've been busy with other stuff, so it hasn't been a priority for me. Plus, I figured, quite frankly, if you had an issue with my performance, I would know about it.
Yeah.
Well, we haven't been able to see you to talk about it, but
He's going to say the list is long.
We just want the other stuff to create a fog that we can't ever remember 2019.
It seems like a long time ago.
Losing control of the meeting with some of these folks here.
Yeah.
I
think it's Brianna.
I see who the good ones are.
Yeah, that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Ms. Moss. You're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I will just say that I had the experience of trying to get around Washington Boulevard and Veterans Drive last week, and that was quite a challenge. I'm sure when it's done, it's going to be great, but I just wanted to know that that was the challenge. Thank you.
Right. Ms. Farmer.
I had the pleasure of attending the North Lakewood Neighborhood Association meeting Friday night, and it was a Zoom, their very first Zoom, and so there were about 15 folks online, and they were just tickled to make a connection with each other from their homes, and it was super fun to be there. They had a number of items, and I committed the city manager to do a virtual state of the city address to the group. They're very excited. They just love that. So that's coming. They also had some kudos for the now retired, I believe, Officer Gail Connolly. And they wanted to just say again, what a joy she was to work with, and super excited to get to know their new officer. They also had plenty of kudos for Chief Zaro and the crew, and just wanted to make sure that we knew that they're feeling the love, and wanted to share that. And I'll have another small list of items that they were curious about, including the bricks. So I'll get to you, Mr. City Manager, with a couple of questions that they had. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have a comment per se, but I do have a follow-up question to the subject that Mr. Brandstetter brought up concerning the city manager's evaluation. Are we required to do this on a yearly basis, particularly given the fact that we cannot sit down and meet face to face in order to do this evaluation?
We're at least contractually required by the agreement we have.
I didn't hear all that, Mayor. There's some other chatter
Yeah.
breaking
Said
up?
we're at least contractually required by our contract with the city manager
right.
to give him a
Well,
written
can
evaluation.
we make a revision to this process to meet that contractual obligation? Because it seems to me that one of the frustrations I've had throughout since about March is meeting like this. And if I'm going to do an evaluation, I would prefer that we did it face to face. I prefer that we did it, in conjunction, like I say, the city manager kicks us off. So I'm wondering if we might think about streamlining it then, given that we are working in this different environment. That's all I had to say, Mr. Mayor. It's just a question.
One thing we may do is have discussions where we have volunteers to be online and a limited number of people in the room.
Okay, thank you.
To comply with the governor's requirements but they change weekly, so it's hard to tell what in advance what we might do. So
yeah, all right.
we'll
Thanks.
look at the options available at the time. Yeah. Mr. Bolke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of things. Really pleased with the progress that they're making out on Onyx. It's a big project, and they're pouring concrete, and it's beginning to take shape. And then the lights and everything else. There's still a lot to do, but really really pleased with the forward progress. I tried to negotiate the same thing that Councilmember Moss mentioned, that Washington Boulevard Veterans Drive. I take it as if they have huge areas of the street closed, that they're making a lot of progress on it. So I guess I took it as a good sign, but I was glad I don't go that way every day. I also want a heads up, Mayor. I will let you and the city manager know that Monday night I may not make it. Monday the 10th, I may not make it to the meeting. So, but I will give you a heads up prior to the meeting.
All right, Mr. Whalen.
Well, I wanted to make sure that you knew that distant meetings didn't keep me away from tonight. So I really appreciate seeing all of you. I'm here in sunny Orcas Island. Beautiful today. That's Ferry Dock, but we had a little getaway weekend, so it was kind of nice to get away. But in terms of activities last week, I went out and looked at some of the progress on the roadway, the roadscapes out there in Oak Brook and also on Veterans Drive, and we're doing incredible work out there. And I want to give kudos to the city manager and staff. There was a citizen who contacted me and made a request that we come take a look at perhaps adjusting a light pole that was going to be situated in front of his driveway. And I ran out there that evening. I think it was after one of the last council meetings. And indeed, it looked as if it was improperly positioned, and the city manager was very ably apt to get the crew out there to take a look at it, and they did adjust it to the satisfaction of the neighbors. So little things like that matter. Big projects are big projects, but they still impact people. So I really appreciate that work. Other than that, it's been a busy week. Hope everyone gets the chance to exercise their opportunities as a citizen to vote. We got our primary tomorrow, and many issues on the ballot for sure. So thanks again for allowing me to be a little bit remote and a little bit on vacation for at least 2 days. And I'll be back at it later tonight as soon as the ferry arrives. So thank you.
Right, thanks. I too had some interest in the progress on Veterans Drive, but as an aside, I was in a totally unrelated meeting this week that included a couple of contractors, one of whom lives in that general area, and they indicated they thought that Miles was doing a good job, and they had sympathy for Miles, the contractor, because they had so many supervisors, and in addition to people who would not pay no attention to the traffic restrictions. So I hope that wasn't the council members checking it out. But I think some time ago, but maybe getting a year and a half or so ago, we had the South Military Community Partnership video of the impact of Joint Base Lewis McChord economically in a UW study. We're having that updated. I saw a script today, and so the dollar numbers are bigger, but it's going to be the same images, more or less. Some synergies. Kudos to you folks for adopting the rental housing inspection program when you did. There has been $3.25 million allocated for rental assistance paid directly to landlords. Tenant applies, landlord gets the money to assist with the back rent. At $3.25 million coming through the county. There's another $10.7 million coming from the state. I suggested that the best way to facilitate that would be to talk to the landlords. They know who's in default. That finally stuck. Got assistance from our former council member, Marie Barth, and Mike Larson over at Allen Realty for some input on that. But most importantly, the city manager provided Pierce County Human Services with a list of names and contacts of 1,000 folks who have registered for the rental housing assistance program. The top 25 of those represent about 4,000 units. The top 120 of them represent about 7,000 units. They immediately got feedback. So the outreach to landlords because of that information was first to Lakewood. And so a lot of folks in our city are going to end up getting help with their rent, facilitated and expedited by the information in the rental housing assistance program. I heard today that one landlord was having 13 folks apply. So good news for folks who are having financial troubles in the COVID environment. Anything else to come before the council?
Mayor, may I just say something? Councilmember Farmer mentioned the bricks. I presume, Councilmember, you're referencing the bricks in front of City Hall.
Yes.
So actually, good timing. So I understand the engraver will be out this week to do the engraving. Yeah. So they've been stop and go, not just because of COVID, but also because of weather. So I believe the city clerk, and she can either nod or a thumbs up. I think it's Wednesday or Thursday of this week.
Correct. They're scheduled to be here 8 to 5 this Wednesday.
Awesome. Thank you.
And there's still some bricks available for purchase.
Very cool.
Anything further? Well, thank you all. What?
How much are the bricks?
$50, Councilmember Moss.
50, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? If there's no further business to come before the council, then we're adjourned.
Thank you.
See you next week.
Good night, everybody.
Good
night.